approached this film, we had a new villain, a very good villain, I think a very challenging villain, and we also had to show our character in the flesh. In the first movie, we had masks for both Spider-Man and for the Green Goblin. So their faces or flesh was covered throughout most of the film. We never had to create a CG character with CG flesh.
Because we had to intercut a lot with either a stunt Doc Ock or the real Alfred Molina, our skin and flesh had to hold up to very, very close scrutiny. And it's something that's been very difficult in CG in the past, so we knew that was going to be our biggest challenge.
The amount of light that's striking my face, it's being refracted by my skin, how much comes out the other side and why, is an enormous number of calculations. And there's ways to do that, but it would take months, literally, to render or to represent a single frame of my face with these lights in a computer-generated situation using purely the physics of it. So we, as always in the movies, cheat.
Speed.
We investigated some technology that was done primarily by the Institute of Creative Technology, which is a branch of USC. And we collaborated with them and went and used their device called a light stage, which is set up to capture what happens to skin when it's hit by different light sources.
So there's a light in 275 positions or whatever it is. You actually photograph the skin doing what it does naturally. And what you have is the ability to combine that light from over there and that light from down there and that light from up there and that light from up there to make a light source that comes at me from that side. So what you end up with is a natural looking sense of flesh. What you do is you texture that, essentially project that onto a piece of geometry, which is my face. And I got that by being scanned.
In order to get the proper facial expressions on them, John worked with Tobey Maguire, I worked with Alfred Molina, and we essentially directed them in facial performances of different ranges of emotion with motion capture.
We measured every inch of their body, we cyber scanned every inch of them from head to toe. We did a lot of motion capture on their movements, facial expressions, how they open and close their eyes, how they smile, how they frown, pretty much all of the range of emotions that we could get. We had them read lines from the script so we could capture performance of how they might say different lines of dialogue.
Those expressions then became blend shapes. The blend shapes, the combination of a smile and a raised eyebrow, are brought together and texture mapped using the flesh that we did in the original photography, laid onto this geometry. And then an artist has to go back in and touch up the place where the eyebrow was lifted too much or one of the cheeks got a little too broad. But you get essentially all of the nuance, all of the subtlety by using components from the actor, and you get the performance by allowing the animators to put together the expressions with the proper timing.
So that every time you see them in a fight sequence, if you stop and you go through slowly, you'll see all these different facial expressions on the characters. And it adds to the believability of that character as opposed to some generic scream, generic frown, generic pain, whatever. Certainly the shot that's probably has to be, the proof in the pudding is the one at the end when they're in the pier and Doc Ock pulls this whole fusion machine down, and this last time we see him, he's full screen. And he's all CG, intending it to look like a real actor. And he drifts away down into blackness, ultimately. And I don't know that we've ever scrutinized an image like that, CG, that close on the screen before.
So this is a wireframe representation of our computer-generated Doc Ock. And what it is in the computer, a definition of what all the surfaces of the character are. And it's created through a number of different layers. And as we're evaluating the shot, we'll look at it in this form because it's a good form for us to see what's working and what isn't working, and where we have detail and where we need detail. And then we'll go to the stage where we look at it in a sort of diffuse view, which is a surface that has very simple shading and very simple lighting on it. And it lets us see details like where wrinkles are and where intersections are, where the cloth might go through his body and where it's working. Once we're satisfied that everything's working in that view, we'll go to a view that's called an ambient occlusion render, and that's what this render is. And it allows us to see lighting and where areas are that will have the light that's in the scene occluded and where it's blocked. And so it allows us to notice where shadowing will occur, and we actually use it in our final rendering and lighting of the character. It's something that's relatively new in computer graphics over the last 2 to 3 years. Here we have 4 different layers to our final composited shot of the actor. So what our artist John Manos has done when he's lit the shot is worked very much like a director of photography would on set, where he's put in special lights from different locations to highlight areas of the face that he wants to bring up or bring down. So in the top left-hand corner, he's got a light from the right that gives good definition to the face and nice shadowing on the left-hand side of his nose, and that's going to be one of the primary sources. On the upper right corner, it's a very, very flat base. It's used for where we need to bring in detail that's in the shadows so everything doesn't go completely clipped out black. The left-hand bottom side is another fill pass, and it fills in the left side of the face while still giving some shadowing definition. And then the bottom right-hand image is a rim light, and that's a very important light just to give definition of the hair and more dramatic sense to the lighting. Here we have all the different layers that go into the final composited shot that give an atmosphere and a realism and help sell the fact that it's underwater. We've got in the top left a backlighting look that gives some atmosphere and some depth to the shot. On the top right we have a murky underwater feel, so it's a cooler bluish kind of tone, and it gives some of the depth feeling of the water. On the bottom left is a bubble layer. It's like the fusion ball that he's falling down into is superheating the water and creating these bubbles around it. That also gives a depth to the shot. And the bottom right is a background layer that shows some shadowing from the source, the energy ball source, through the actual geometry that he's falling down into. And you put all the layers together and it helps sell the feel that we're underwater with many different layers and levels of depth. And of course our actor in the end, we get a very good look at his face, and it's the closest actually we see of his face in the whole movie without the glasses.